just like administering CPR.
Yeah, Heimlich.
You're offering assistance, Heimlich, I'm helping you breathe, live.
Totally slam dunk protected. And I would like to change this into the lifeguard exam, where people are proud that their child knows how to do this, as opposed to this is for a bunch of dirty, stinking, rotten people. I mean, I work in with the homeless population, and they're like you and me. They just don't smell quite as lovely as us, but they're just us.
That's a beautiful reframe. And I would love for all of us to get to a place, and that's why I invited you here, so that we could talk about it and we could really break it down and break the stigma and all have naloxone to help resuscitate lives.
Yeah, because I know people have a very romantic notion of what dead is. We think of James Dean and Marilyn Monroe, but you know, Luke is in a box on my bedside table. His ashes are still there. And it's not glamorous. And guess what? Dead people don't come back. Dead is dead.
Like Sheila Scott, 9 years ago, her vibrant 23-year-old son Luke died of an overdose. Today, she carries both her grief and his legacy forward by fighting to prevent other families from knowing this pain. She trains teens to reverse overdoses, shatters myths about who's at risk, spoiler, everyone, and exposes how just 3 grains of fentanyl can kill. This is Beyond the Window.
Hi, I'm Sharon Volner, and we are here on Beyond the Window podcast, and my guest is Sheila Scott, founder, empress, queen of the LukeLove Foundation. Tell me, Sheila, what is the LukeLove Foundation? What does it do?
Well, we started talking about traumatic grief because it started with me publishing my journal from the first year after Luke was killed by a drug overdose. And then when I realized there's no cure for what I've got, but naloxone became available to households, we started training people how to reverse overdose using naloxone, which is the medical term for Narcan is a brand. Most people know that. Cloxado is another brand. Because if the person who was with Luke that night knew how to use it and knew the laws around it and knew what we teach, Luke would not have died that night. So I moved into the space where prevention was better than living with what I live with. And Luke's friends and Luke's associates. So the ripple of trauma when you lose someone to overdose is phenomenal. And so I work with training people how to reverse overdose in their friends, in strangers, because they don't need to live with that trauma.
And who is Luke?
Luke is my son. He was 23 when he died. He was a renowned PA in the film industry, and the drugs didn't come from the film industry. They did, but that's not where it started. I was doing a book reading in Northern Ireland in a stately home, and they were like, we're so lucky that we're protected from this. And I'm like, oh, they think this has got to do with the film industry. Luke's first hit of A-class drugs came from the Pony Club, which is like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts on ponies as opposed to off ponies. And obviously it was from the model child that everybody was saying, why can't you be more like that person? So it starts in very unusual places. And of course, as he grew up and became a brilliant PA, the drugs are very widely available on film sets, but they're widely available everywhere. And so that's just us. So just let's remember, it all started at the Pony Club, living in rural England.
So there's a lot of stigma around drugs, substance use, experimentation, and I want to open up this conversation because as a mom myself and having my daughter in high school and middle school, I've been around many circles that have said, oh, my kid's the good kid, my kid doesn't do that. And so help me with that, because drugs are everywhere. And it's not just drugs.
No, it isn't. If you get me on a good day, I will say, well, good kids have friends that make dodgy mistakes, and even good kids make bad mistakes. If you get me on a bad day, I'll just say you're saying Luke was bad. It's natural to think it's not going to be you because it's too scary to look at.
Right.
We have become so clickbaited into being outraged on such a high level that we can't cope with too much. And it would be lovely if it was just other people's children that died. And it would be lovely if you could tell. And it would be lovely if you could indemnify yourself. Let's not be like that crazy English woman and our kids will be fine. That would be brilliant. But it's a false sense of security. It's a false indemnification. Because if it was just a certain type of child, we wouldn't have the epidemic that we have. It goes right across race, right across class, right across income brackets. In fact, the high school in California with the most overdose rate is the wealthiest county in California. It's Marin County currently. What seems to change it, the anomaly in those high schools, is the ones that talk about it, is the high schools that have an open conversation. And in my experience going around training people of all walks of life, from street medics down to, people have me in their private home to talk to their children and their friends' children, what this does is it opens up a conversation. And it warmed my heart when I left a house and all the mums were sending me texts saying, little Sarah took an extra kit because it turns out that her friend is at risk and is using blah, blah, blah. Now, how are you going to open that conversation up with your mum over the Cheerios unless you've had someone like me in there going, I'm sorry, these are the facts. I'm quite brutal about it. And the other thing is, even if your child is the perfect model child, they don't need to witness or be present for someone dying because the trauma is deep and will never go away. And instead, we empower them to be able to reverse that overdose so they don't have to suffer that. And so, yeah, we need the good kids so that they can help the kids that make a dumb mistake, or what those people would like to call the bad kids.
Yeah.
And we all know someone who likes a bump on a Saturday night and or very rarely has a snort of something or smokes or something. They don't need to die for that.
So we just had, here we are in July. We just went through graduation season and prom season, and I'm giving away Narcan, and this is for your teen, and this is for your loved one, and this is for your car. And I shared the story with you where I gave them out, and I was told, we don't need this because we don't do those type of things, or we're only drinking, or after prom when they were handed back to me. We don't need this because if my mom finds out, I'll be in trouble, or I don't want to upset anyone if I have this in my car. I don't want to give the wrong impression. So please speak to that.
Well, of course, we would like to think that the only dangerous moment is the prom. And that's not what the data shows. And we would like to think that they only need it when they go to college. And I'm like, you need it now. And the getting into trouble thing, this is an over-the-counter medication in every state in America. And it's that for a reason. When Luke died, naloxone wasn't in households. It's been around for years. And it took the numbers to get to, I think it was currently like 75,000 a year and lots of white kids before we could have naloxone in our households. And it wasn't available when Luke died. So if everybody just has a more collective thought that if it's not for you, it's for saving somebody else's life, because everybody who dies is someone's child, someone's sister, brother, and you are fully indemnified. You will not get into trouble for using it, even if the person still dies. And we've had to write special laws about that because people were more concerned with keeping hold of their wealth and getting sued or getting into trouble than saving a life.
So this is like CPR or the controversial conversation of if I give a teen a condom, they're going to have sex and it's going to promote it. So if some teen has these kits in their car, that means they're more prone to do drugs or...
Yeah, I got a lot of it at home. I'm not rocking out, checking out the rainbow fentanyl. But also, do you have fire insurance on your house?
Well, the answer is yes.
Well, there you are.
But I'm not planning a fire. So it's like that. It's having the insurance because you never know.
Yep, you never know. And also, it's nice to have that confidence. If we've got an army of people who are carrying it, also keeping it in your car might not be fast enough. Keep it in your handbag. If the teens will tell you, my naloxone battalion who come to my house and learn to train other people and pack our kits for us, and they might get cold. They borrow a jacket, and every single jacket pocket has a naloxone dose in it. It's like hair ties or cigarette lighters for smokers. They're in every pocket, and that's the way you have to think of it. And because fentanyl or nitazines can kill you in minutes. Brain damage will be completed in 4 minutes, and an ambulance in the Los Angeles area, even in an urban area, takes 11 minutes. And so you're it. You are the one. The person who's right there next to the person is the one. And you'll be late to the party because you won't know they've taken it, and you won't know what they've taken. So just jump in there, get that shit up their nose, and that's all it is. And if a lot of people are dead because the people who were with them were too scared to call for help for whatever reason. You're high, I'm high, we've got drugs here, we're underage, whatever the thing, then they don't call for help. And the current drugs kill you so quickly. Now, they might not kill you that fast because you might only have a measure, a tiny grain, a tiny fraction of that. But they're on their way to killing you. And as I say, like if you are on probation or you're scared, you go home, someone's overdosing, party's over. If we've got 20 kilos out the back, we're all going down. That doesn't indemnify you against previous criminal activity. But teenagers need to know, and so do grown-ups, that, I might get into trouble. The police can't touch you. And it's on my website, the laws for California, and you can look them up by state on my website too. So likely Luke is dead because the person who was with him was too scared to call for help. And part of the training isn't just naloxone administration. It's about how the laws work, how to identify overdose. We have a 5-year-old who saved someone's life by coming in and saying, "Mummy, he's a funny color." We have a 12-year-old who administered the naloxone and saved their lives. So just let's be in the just say no space and not in the, I can't handle this. You've got fire insurance. You're not expecting to go home and find your house on fire.
Right. So KNO as in no.
Yes.
Know the facts. So what about families that say, well, my kid doesn't do fentanyl. So do we need naloxone?
Well, you don't know whether your child is doing fentanyl or not. They might be getting Adderall so that they can ace an exam or ace a baseball game. They might be getting it from an illicit source. And 98% of what the DEA has seized, whatever it's supposed to be, have fentanyl in it. So you don't know. And the point of taking drugs and the point of slipping an Adderall or a Xanax when you want to do is you want to be removed from reality and facts.
So we're talking about any pill. So we're talking about anyone trying a Xanax, trying Adderall, trying cocaine, trying anything that wasn't in a prescription bottle for them specifically that could be laced with any traces of this.
Even if you get it from a lovely person like me, you don't actually know what slip of reality I had when I procured them.
Yeah.
So, that is completely what is happening. And we've got this whole faction of people who are whining, oh, my son was poisoned and he didn't overdose. Well, overdose just means that too much of something capped your receptors and you ceased to breathe.
Right.
The stigma of they were poisoned means that they didn't do it on purpose, and overdose and death has no judgment in it. Your body doesn't have a different response to a illicit drug than it does to a prescription drug. And so it would be suicide if they meant to do it. That would be another category. But literally, don't come whining to me, or as Luke would say, mate, what do you want? It's a drug deal.
Right. So we're not talking about kids identified as addicts. We're talking about people who take something to escape, to feel different, to party.
Yeah. And reality isn't part of that gig. That's inherent in drug use.
Right.
Nobody says, hey, let's go and try meth on a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. It'll be peer pressure. It'll be the hot girl or the hot boy. Or you have anxiety and everyone at the party seems to be having a fabulous time and you're sitting there chewing your nails, feeling all anxious. Why don't you have one of these? And the person who will be offering them to your children will often be, I'm having a great time. I want you to have a great time.
Yeah.
How many times have you gone somewhere and someone says, go on, Sharon, have a drink, have a glass of wine. And you're like, no, I've got to get up in the morning. Go on, just have a little one. Expand that. How many people have to have a cup of coffee before they walk into a boardroom? Have a gin and tonic before they deal with their in-laws? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And remember the good thing about drugs, if you're a teenager, is you can't smell it. You can smell alcohol.
Right.
So no one's going to know.
So how does it work? Where do you get it? How does it work?
Naloxone?
Yes.
Naloxone is available over the counter in every single state in America. It's like $44.99 and plus tax. And if you think that's expensive, the day before that happened, it was $180. California has an online thing where you can get it for $24.99 plus postage and packing. Or you can get it from organizations like myself, where the California Department of Health give it to us for free and we distribute it. And the most common, where's it gone? The most common version of it is a nasal spray.
Okay.
And it is administered simply by putting it into the nose and firing it like fancy Flonase. But what I encourage people to think of it as is this not a nasal spray. I want you to think of it as a brain spray that we access via the nose.
Right.
And then even if the person is no longer breathing, by chemical reactions, it will move into the parts of the brain and uncap the opioid. The opioid will come down onto your receptor in your brain or receptors all over your brain and body. But let's just keep it simple and cap it, and breathing will cease. So it's a bad design. This part of your receptors is where the opioid receives, but it's also what controls your breathing. But people just suffocate. That's how it works. And the naloxone has a greater affinity and it will bump the opioid off, but the opioid won't die. The opioid will still be there. And so will this last 30 to 90 minutes and the opioid overdose could return. It only works on opioids. So if you're having an overdose from alcohol, Adderall, cocaine, whatever, it's the fentanyl or the opioid component that it works on, and then it will allow breathing to resume. We encourage that you call an ambulance because you don't know what they took and you don't know what other effects are coming into play. They might be having a cardiac arrest, they might be toxified by something else. If you're wrong and it's not an opioid overdose, you won't harm them. But I encourage when you call 911 that you speak to what you see. Person is unresponsive. The most important thing we teach our teens is the sternal rub. And if you don't want to get involved in this whole area, then you can do it on the top lip. And it's painful. And if the person doesn't groan or moan, they're out. And you start administering naloxone. What I don't want to encourage my teens to do is run around the streets and take all the homeless people who've had to do God knows what in order to afford their fentanyl dose. They're in a different category. Their goal is to be just this side of dead. That's where they're going. That's what they want. And so don't be knocking that out. If they're responsive, then leave them be, or maybe monitor them. But when we're talking about the teens and the opioid the people who are not used to taking opioids, you need to get in there swiftly because their tolerance is not high and they might have got, 3 grains of salt will kill you and me worth of fentanyl.
Right.
Dead in seconds.
And you don't know where the grains of salt are, so you have no
it's
idea
like,
where
I
they
think
are.
the Americans like to talk to, I've got this very advanced thing where I hand out little baggies with 3 grains of salt, and then I hand out an 8-ball of salt with 3 grains of pepper and try and say, well, if you tested it here, you'd look like you're good to go. But if you come down here, here's all the fentanyl. I think you call that the chocolate chip cookie effect, where all the chocolate could be in one section
area
of the cookie. And no, you can't see it, you can't smell it. And also, everyone's still talking about fentanyl, but nitazines or nitazines, it's like the tomato thing, they're the new kids on the block. They're not a fentanyl analog, and so that's a legal whack-a-mole around all of the new fentanyl laws, which are pointless. And so whereas I'm quite political about that, my game is to save lives. Teach people how to use naloxone, give them the information and the courage to use it. And the parents are resistant, but if you talk to the kids, those kids that they're worried about being in trouble with their parents. Send the parents to me. Let's have a chat about it. Take a look at Luke. The picture that we use all the time is 3 weeks before Luke died. I challenge you to know. When you can't tell. You couldn't know if I was taking heroin. Everybody thinks they're going to know. I wish it was that easy.
So it doesn't discriminate. It's kind of everywhere. And kids are going to parties. People are going to parties. And people don't know what they're putting in their bodies.
Yeah, we did a school recently where the night before I trained all the parents at the school. And then the next day I went in to do the 500 kids in one of those gyms that I'd never seen apart from on the TV, those big American gyms. And the parents were like, it's in the cocaine. And all the color drained out of their faces. And so I really wanted to go to the children and say, you might want to be thinking you're going to be reversing one of your parents' friends. And the other common thing is, oh no, my dealer tests all my drugs for me. Well, let's look at how does that look. So you and I have just taken a massive delivery and we're going to empty it all out in trays and do the milligram thing, the milliliter thing, and dilute it just so. And then we're going to put the testing strip in all our giant trays. And then if it's negative, we're going to rehydrate it and then put it into bags. What do you think they're doing? What they might be doing is spot testing their baggies. So then we can look at what happened in a nightclub in Los Angeles where DanceSafe, which is an organization that tests drugs, were testing drugs. Someone took their baggie out there and it tested positive for fentanyl. So they went down to the dealer and said, hey, you got Fenty in your gear. And the dealer was like, oh, Christ, and then came running up. They tested 9 or more bags and they tested negative.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a Russian roulette thing. So we also supply fentanyl test strips. Now, for the addict population, they use them to test that there is fentanyl in it because that's what they think they're buying.
Right.
Which is there's some comedy in all of this.
Yeah.
And the teenagers are using it to avoid fentanyl or nitazines.
So what if the kids are getting pills or teens or adults are, borrowing Xanax, handing out Adderall?
They're at risk.
They're at risk.
They're at massive risk because if it's from an illicit source, we have no idea. And also there is a cross-contamination thing. So even if your dealer has got hold of pharmaceuticals, Xanax, whatever, Oxy, Percocets, Vicodin, Norco, they might be bagging it up on a table where they've previously been fiddling with fentanyl. And when you see how little can kill you, you can see unless they've hermetically cleaned the entire table,
Right.
you can get a contamination.
So how do you speak to the denial of the families in affluent, middle-class affluent, anywhere actually, where the parents are saying, my kid doesn't do this. This is not what's happening. My kid
Great,
doesn't do
then
the
your
fentanyl."
kid's available to save someone else's kid.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And also, another reason is that in the elderly population, and I do know women who have suffered this, when they are elderly or anyone who takes benzodiazepines, Xanaxes, because that, as you know, functions on a memory alteration, they'll take a medication, they'll forget they've taken it and take it again. And it'll kill them. So there are many ways that people can overdose, even on prescription drugs, and we bring them in. But usually I'm like, well, have you spoken to your child about this? And if they're all in the same room at the same time, there's a little bit of silence to start with, but I'm kind of, they'll get gobby and start to talk about stories. One training, I was leaving a private house, and the young man suddenly said, what if I can't call the police if this happens at my party? And he is a student at a very wealthy school, of which we've got a lot in California. And they're like having Project X type parties with valet parking, you know, the whole thing. And the parents are on some yacht in the Med, and they're not even there, and the kids are having a party without him. He said, my friends would kill me. And the mother started up like I used to, and I'm sure you do too. And I was like, Mum, zip it. Okay, tell me. And he goes, I couldn't possibly call. And I go, okay, so this is what you do. You follow them around with your second and third doses, and maybe you've got some other good children at the party who are carrying naloxone, and you might need 8 or 9, and you follow them around because the half-life of that opioid might be longer than the naloxone works, and it might return. Or you might be having a stroke, or you might have been affected by the xylazine or the something else, or all the other nonsense. Nitazines were not approved by the FDA because they have a high cardiac risk, and so that's why the cartels went and found it, because it's not a fentanyl analog, so it bypasses the laws. What if they're having a cardiac? The naloxone won't help with the cardiac arrest. Mm-hmm. It'll get you breathing again. Mm-hmm. And so this child was like, great, thanks. And the mother was like, and I was like, yeah, we wish, but there's myriad reasons why someone might not phone for an ambulance. In my country, ambulances are free. There's your number one. They might not be documented. There might be many reasons. So when you call 911 and request assistance, speak to what you see, person unresponsive. You don't actually know that they are having a drug overdose, maybe, because then the cops show up. Now, contrary to popular belief, not all of the cops in California are carrying naloxone. We supply some of them.
So I've actually responded to, in my line of work where there was an overdose, and I showed up after the police showed up, after ambulance showed up, and firsthand witness, they revived him and they took him to an ambulance, and there were 0 arrests. Is that like what's expected?
That's exactly what should happen. And I have been asked by some of my teens if they can make me their first phone call. And I've doled out my phone number. And then the second question is, can we put you on TikTok telling the cops off? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. So people can ask for help. People can use naloxone. They will not be arrested.
No, and if you are in concern, then I urge you to go to our website, which is LukeLove.org, and go to the section of which is overdose response, and go to the law. Screenshot that. Respectfully, officer. And then you show them the California laws, or if you're out of state, you can go and look up the current laws there. And respectfully, officer. I mean, when I work downtown, I say a lot because the cops don't always know the correct law, and they all laugh at me and go, yes, Sheila, we know. But if you're doing it in a more affluent area, they're shocked. So, or in the prison population, they've got a whole nother set of rules. But no, they cannot. That won't stick.
So it is like administering CPR.
Heimlich.
You're offering assistance, Heimlich, I'm helping you breathe, live.
Totally slam dunk protected.
Yeah.
And I do understand. I would like to change this into the lifeguard exam, where people are proud that their child knows how to do this, as opposed to this is for a bunch of dirty, stinking, rotten people. I mean, I work in with the homeless population, and they're like you and me. They just don't smell quite as lovely as us, but they're just us.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reframe. And I would love for all of us to get to a place, and that's why I invited you here, so that we could talk about it and we could really break it down and break the stigma and all have naloxone or Clexato or Narcan or whatever we need to have on our person to help resuscitate lives.
Yeah, because you can't undo. I know people have a very romantic notion of what dead is.
Yeah.
We think of James Dean and Marilyn Monroe and la la la. But, Luke is in a box on my bedside table. His ashes are still there. And it's not glamorous. And guess what? Dead people don't come back. Dead is dead. And I know that takes a little bit to sink in, but amongst the grieving parents, we're like, there's a poem. It's called The Distressed Haiku. And it's, you think the worst thing that can happen is that they die and then they stay dead. And this just doesn't need to happen to our children. And our children don't need to have it happen to their friends, or they don't need to witness it happen to a stranger. Or even if it's the asshole in the classroom that everybody hates, they don't need to witness that either. Shame is something that will come, and guilt will come back and bounce on them later, and they don't need that. In fact, my teens are proud and strutty, and also they're very well informed. And mostly when you talk to a teenager who thinks they're striking a blow for their personal freedom to take a bunch of drugs, when they hear that the reason that we're lacing the drugs with fentanyl is that we can hook you, that we all know someone who likes a bump on the Saturday night thing, but if I slip you a little Fenty, it's so addictive. Yeah. Providing you survive, you're coming back to me on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And then they get really indignant and moral and like, well, I can't believe that's, a business decision. What do you think a cartel is? And children and teenagers are fabulous, but sometimes they don't think. In fact, most of the time, the glorious thing about them is they don't think. And this is a safety net, just like your fire insurance.
Yeah. So you started LukeLove to promote education, to save lives. And tell me about your battalion team.
Well, I started doing this part of LukeLove because I thought I could use it to change the conversation. And I thought I would just train a few friends and some extra people. I had no idea that I'd be doing it this long and having trained thousands and thousands a year. I hadn't thought about actually saving lives. I know that sounds nuts. So when I get a text message that a life has been saved, or I hear from somebody like yourself that my kit has saved someone, the truth of it is I find it really moving, and I'm surprised. And I go and sit outside where I used to sit with Luke and chat, and where I still wait for him. And I feel that my heart has golden strings, and they kind of go out and find the mother's heart. I'm like, oh, it's still whole for now. And so I'd like to say I'm concerned with the person whose life is saved, but I'm not. It's all about the mothers. Yeah. And the friends and the person who saved their life. That's, and they are amazing, and teenagers feel so powerless, and a lot of trauma comes from no power. The opioid crisis doesn't need to be part of that. And they are loud and proud, and they're getting louder and prouder. And I started my teen program because I don't just give out naloxone in a box. I put it in a fancy kit that's shiny that you can find in the bottom of your handbag. It's got a QR code that takes you to the part of my website, which is shit's hitting the fan, someone's down. What did that crazy lady say?
Yeah.
And on the back of this card are the cliff notes. And there's 2 doses and there's instructions. And for the kids that know how to do lifeguard duty, we give them masks to do rescue breathing.
Yeah.
And they just come and we have a conversation, and the grown-ups are not allowed out with me and the kids. They have to stay in the house. So a whole nother movement has started up amongst those mums and dads. And I cook them fabulous food. I don't just get a Domino's pizza, and I treat them like the precious jewels in my crown that they are. And we sit out there and we talk while we're working, and they tell me things, and we talk about things, and they tell me what people are not hearing or what stigmas, and now we've trained a few of them are really good at learning how to train other people. Your daughter's one of them, and they get bullied old school style to deliver it without that thing that you're not allowed to take up space. It's like I'm Sheila, I'm here to teach you how to save a life. Boom, straight in.
Yeah. And that's how my daughter met you, is at a presentation.
Yes.
And I actually pulled her out of school that day because I figured I love education, and she was going to get an education that she wouldn't have gotten anywhere else. And it really made a mark in her heart. And all she wanted to do was then get to know you and learn more about how to be a part of the solution and how to normalize these conversations. And she's very proud of that.
And she should be proud, because
Yes.
she's very good, as all are. But also what they have to say influences my presentation too, because they give me lots of information. Like, what isn't hitting home? What are they still asking questions about? Well, we've asked and answered. Well, they didn't hear it. So how do we change the presentation so that they hear it the first time? And also, we also teach them how to be organized, how to do it this way, how to do it that way, how to make suggestions. Because I sound so cocksure, but if Ayla's got a better idea, I'll go, oh, let's do it that way. Everyone, we're doing it this way. Or, and that's how good commerce and good projects are done. And I do that the old school way.
Yeah.
And you don't get a prize for just participating.
Yeah. And there's something remarkable about the presentations that the teens are doing. I know mine has done it since she was very young, and it's awe-inspiring to sitting and be a part of the audience of 100 where there's a child teaching the adults things that we don't know.
And that's why it's important that I train them the bullish way that I train them, because I don't want them to bring the teen stuff in, all the flicking, and says me flicking my hair constantly. But the words have to have some gravitas. This is a serious education. For sure. And they do that. They did that well. So the first time they went out, they were in front of 250 people, and they were doing it 2 up at the time, which is even more complex, and not talking over each other. And they did it so well.
So churches, schools, temples, synagogues,
private homes,
everywhere.
I will do it on Zoom. If you're standing behind me in a coffee shop, you'll get trained by accident. I know my teens are the same. We make them T-shirts so that they are clearly labeled that they are people who know what to do. They're always carrying these demonstration models. They've always got a kit. And one of the other things that teens, not my teens, but they'll come and say, oh yeah, I've got one in my bedside table. And I go, great, is that where you're doing the drugs? And they go, no. And I go, well, so why have you got the naloxone in your bedside table? It should be with you. It should be with you even if you're not planning, or none of your friends are planning to do drugs.
Yeah.
That's not how this
and
works.
You said your kids are free. So naloxone, Cloxato, Narcan, everything that you're
Everything
giving.
I do, I'm free. I will train you for free. I will rock up at your house for free. I will come to your organization for free. And we survive on donations. The donations were originally from Luke's funerals in lieu of flowers. And we ask for organizations or private, give us a donation. Think of it as you're buying Luke a cup of coffee. Sometimes we do whole enormous things, give out 500 kits, and we don't get a red cent. And it's like, or sometimes we get a donation that doesn't even cover the packaging. And so, but that's, it's rock and roll. It goes backwards and forwards. Oddly, the balance stays the same all the time. I think that's kind of some magic going on. And occasionally I'm like, come on, we're doing grief groups with the homeless. We're moving things. I need some help. Do this. And our projects are always developing. And sometimes, and mostly actually, the next level of what we're doing comes from my teens, comes from feedback from a training. One of the things I'm hoping to bring the teens to is we do a training in an anti-recidivism organization, and I'm standing in front of 100 early release prisoners.
Wow.
All men. It's a rush. Or as my partner says, they start off staring at your tits and they end up crying into your tits. And I want them to experience how that feels to have, they have a lot more knowledge. The audience at that point has more knowledge about naloxone. In prison, they don't have naloxone
Right.
so much, and they have their own methods of doing it. So you have to be careful not to patronize your audience. So sometimes if you come to a rehab or if you go to a sober living, the people there know more about certain things than you do. So you stay in your lane. Right. You stay, and sometimes you're educating people on how the drug world works. This thing where reality isn't part of it. It's the point of it is to step away from facts and reality.
So on your website is access to you,
Yeah.
your battalion squad,
Yeah.
naloxone, how to save a life, your story.
Yeah. My grief journal from the first year was published and has sold hundreds and hundreds. And I get emails from people that make it seem worthwhile laying myself and Luke completely naked out there. And then I carry on the grief journal from there because, regardless of what the diagnostic statistic manual would like to say, is it's not over a year. I'm in my 9th year and I still have terrible days. I still have days. I'm late for this recording because it's June. That's Luke's birthday. I'm all over the place in June and I'm all over the place around his death day. Yeah. And I don't do it to whine. I do it so that someone who is suffering as I do, when the rest of the world thinks you should be over it by now, whatever over it means, knows that at least there's another crazy person.
Yeah. We've done a segment on grief with Debbie Frankel, as you know.
Yeah, she's lovely.
And we talk about how it doesn't go away. It's something that we learn to manage and cope with and deal with and learn from and fuel us, as you said. And you are one very fueled, powerful woman who is really making a mark on many lives, like my daughter Ayla, who gets to volunteer for you and is so very proud.
She should be.
And all the lives that you're changing and providing education and awareness for.
And we just had a teen packing and it was kind of reunion. They were brilliant.
I'm usually the last to know. It's usually I'm going to Sheila's house. We've got a party packing kit. Situation.
Yeah. And they won't let me change the menu. I have to do the same thing every time.
Thank you so much. And we're going to make sure that your information is accessible all over our podcast. And I'd like to have you back because I know that this is going to get a lot of questions, responses, and reactions. And there's so much more to talk about this.
And also, I encourage, no matter how crazy your question is or how damning your question is, I'm kind of bulletproof at this point.
Yeah.
And you can't hurt me. I've been hurt the hardest I could ever be hurt. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Sheila Scott's mission proves one life can save many. To learn how you can help, from carrying naloxone to sharing her story, visit LukeLove.org. This is Beyond the Window.